afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TraderMerlin Show. Is your Tuesday edition, Trivia Tuesday. Got some fun rounds planned for this evening, but that doesn't matter to you guys because it's Trader Tuesday, actually, and what a wild ride we had today. We were talking about Bitcoin in particular hitting its all-time high, which we eclipsed that today. And it was funny. It was almost one of those buy the rumor, sell the news events. Almost the minute we hit all-time highs on Bitcoin, it just proceeded to fall like a rock. Now, I got so many people freaking out and messaging me about it. It's like, look, you realize that it just erased yesterday's gains, right? And so we'll look at that chart here in just a second. But let's talk about the graphic that I asked AI to make for me today. The joy of trading, which for many of you probably feels like this on a regular basis. You know, you got the great ups and exciting parts where it moves up and find yourself screaming when it moves down. You know, that's the nature of the beast. If you look back to when the exchanges started here in the U.S., going back to the 1800s, it's always been like this. Huge moves up and crazy moves down. It's the nature of the beast and the fun that makes it kind of fun. So let me, Mark says there are some slightly weird hands in that picture, but they all have the correct number of fingers. That's true. You remember, Mark, the old pictures used to have really weird hands. These ones have gotten a lot better. They even put a wedding ring on this girl's pinky over here. I don't know what that is. But yeah, these hands aren't too bad. There's one over here that's got some really tweaked fingers. It's like throwing the nanu thing. But yeah, it's definitely got a lot better. Maybe, you know, people start complaining about Midjourney's misrepresentation and wokeism with regards to hand deformations. Who knows? People pick all kinds of crazy fights out there. But as far as today goes, you know, there obviously was some big market movers for some of you. Kind of the big one that I've been watching as a leading indicator has been Apple. We know it's the biggest weighting on the market, and we know it's in the S&P and the NASDAQ. And lo and behold, it has been the leader from the tech side to the downside. It was the leader to the upside. Now it's the leader to the downside. So let's start there. I just want to look at what went on with Apple today. So here's your Apple chart, and we brought this one up last week, right? We talked about how Apple looks like it's been getting weaker and kind of towing this line at 179.53. Now, I didn't bring it up yesterday because I just got so wrapped up in everything else because there was so much to talk about, particularly with all the great questions that you guys kept asking me, which I love it. So don't hold back on asking me questions. Just, I feel bad if I don't get to them all. But since that break, you know, there are measuring objects that people use to calculate like where might something fall to in a descending triangle. And if we look at this graphic here of Apple's chart from the peak, which was back here on the 14th of December, right around 199.76, somewhere on there, to its baseline, which is 179.53, that's the number we pointed out. A lot of people use this as a measuring object, as a descending triangle. And the example here, someone asked me, where do you think Apple might be headed in one of the messages? And, well, you know, it does forecast based off a measuring object. And let's put this, I'll mark it out here and take that line away so we can kind of have it for reference later on. It looks to be right around 161.42. And I will label this with a measured move. I can't really see. My eyes are bad on this one. But it looks like I'll just put measured move in there, and I'll leave it at that. There we go, measured move. And I'll take that one away to see if it actually does end up getting to that target. But it seems like it's screaming towards it right now. You had a 2.8% slide for Apple today. It's up a little bit in the after-hour session. But really, there was nothing to stop this until we get to this most recent bounce point on Apple, which goes back to when this whole rally started. You guys might remember my birthday is when this whole market turned around and just went absolutely gangbusters ever since. And Apple has been this one that's been showing weakness here and slowly drifting lower and lower. This is a really bad sign. If the biggest company in the world, well, it may not be there for long, the biggest company in the United States, we know Aramco might be bigger than this, but in the United States, if this is your biggest dog and all of a sudden it's showing the weakest moves, that is not a good sign. And I personally think that some of this has to do, you had news about Tesla and sales in China really starting to slow down, and maybe we're going to start to hear news about Apple sales slowing down in China as well. We knew that there were some production problems there. This may continue to slide, and if it does, this whole market's going to go with it. And we talked about it on yesterday's show, which was kind of the metals revival is, and I posed the question. I don't know the answer, but typically that flight to metals is a flight to security. And when people feel nervous about the markets, they move to metals. Well, we saw gold and silver up again today. Gold really vaulting higher to all-time highs. I'll bring that chart up here in just a second. But this is kind of an ugly note, an ugly turn of events here for the NASDAQ and markets in particular if Apple continues to slide. So keep your eye on that one going forward. Your next real stopping point should be somewhere around 166.90, which is only about $3 away from, $3.50 away from current level. All right, that was your main one. Let's go look at the other biggest impactors in our market. Here's Microsoft. Okay, so Microsoft still looking good, right? We drew that same basic line that we did with Apple. Apple's was a much more pronounced descending triangle. This really feels like consolidation. I think you guys would agree. It's just kind of sideways action here. So 397.21 is kind of that low point for Microsoft. While Microsoft was down more than Apple today, 2.97%, it still has not broken any of the recent lows. So this is still holding. It's like, hold. Pepe said, what was the cause of today's drop in Apple? I didn't see anything specifically news-wise on Apple. You guys know I kind of avoid Apple anyway, but I didn't really glance at the headlines there. My guess is it's going to be to do with China and forecasts going forward. So I've been saying this for a while. I don't see the logic in Apple continuing to ascend at rates like this based off of iPhone sales, right? I mean, I've got an iPhone here. I think that this is a 14. I'll have this for another 2 or 3 years until I absolutely have to replace it. There are those people, and some of you may be part of that group, which is I'm buying one every single time it comes out. And the latest version, we mocked it on this show. It's like there was no upgrade to it. Their big upgrade was it was like 0.01 grams lighter, and it was made of titanium. So what? I think everybody here would agree. You have a phone case on. You have a cover over your phone. So what does it matter what it's made out of? It could be made out of pure gold. No one's going to see it. I got a case on it, right? I've got a really cool looking gold phone, but it doesn't matter. You don't see one piece of my phone surface exposed here. Whatever. Kind of weird. All right. Massive tax receipts for the government will temporarily drain speculative money out of the economy. It could be part of it, Andrew. Could be a part of it. Yeah, but typically the big tax moves typically happen around the end of the year for tax planning purposes. So that's when you see the big market manipulation stuff for that. I don't think that's necessarily the cause of this. I think the cause of this personally is what our discussion has been for about the last year, which is inflation is not dropping as quickly as the markets have expected. And I think because the energy surge, if we see energy continue to move on up here, that tells us that inflation is in fact still there, not going to drop to that 2% target that the Fed wants, and therefore the Fed may continue to be more aggressive, which slows down markets. And I think that is the domino effect of the data that we're seeing. And I think that's part of why you're seeing tech take a little bit of runoff here. Maybe people are locking in some profits, as I think you should do. I definitely think you should do. For example, we looked at Microsoft. We've had that line drawn in there for a while. If it broke below that, that was your trigger to get out of your Apple. If Microsoft breaks 397.21, that's your clue to get out of Apple. If you have it and you don't want to take the tax hit, then buy a bunch of puts. That's equivalent to your position that you hold of Microsoft, right? Just to protect yourself, because once it breaks this 397.21, you could see a pretty significant sell-off in Microsoft. Now, the other one's actually doing okay. Google is one I've actually been looking at acquiring after this big sell-off and the kind of fiasco about their AI program, which I thought was kind of a joke, to be honest. From its peak to where it closed today, down 14% over the last 25 trading days. So 14% in a month, pretty big slide for Google. Of course, that is about 7% of the S&P, 7% of the NASDAQ. And that's, again, why you're seeing more and more pressure on the NASDAQ over the past couple of weeks. Now, looking at this picture, it still cannot make the argument that this trend is over. It's just a big pullback. And granted, 14% is a pretty significant pullback. The question I'm asking for myself, not for you, but for myself, is what point do I want to buy Google? I think that Google or Alphabet, I will always call this Google, I apologize. There's a level I like right around 131, which we almost tailed into today, but it's not fresh. It's been there before. So then you got to look lower, and does 124 become that level that I'm looking at this going, yeah, I'll buy that. I think at 124 I would actually be okay owning Google, and I may look at this over the next couple days and see and see if I can maybe get some good premium on puts if this market continues to sell off. If we get some more momentum to the downside, then premium is going to accelerate on those put options. So I may be selling it knowing that I'm okay holding Google long term at 124. I think I'm okay there. The big thing with Google, if you look at this price chart, is it really hasn't done much. You go all the way back into 2021, it had a pretty significant slide going into 2022 to late 2022. But it still really is just traversing sideways, and albeit in a very large range, but it's not breaking out. If you look at what Apple has done, right? Apple is higher than those highs from 2021. If you look at Amazon, right? Amazon is not higher than those, actually at a much bigger decline. Meta is actually looking the best. Right, Meta is much higher than those highs from 2021, making all-time highs and continuing to drift higher and higher and higher and not showing any real weakness. Although I do believe if we get below 453, then you're going to see that gap close. So keep your eye on this one. I'm sure I'll make you aware of it when it gets there, because I will probably be shorting that one as well if we get a break below 453 on Meta. So the real joys of trading are about the Apple or the Bitcoin price chart today. You have this monstrous engulfing pattern, and the previous high on the futures chart was 69,590, right? That's the futures side of things. Today, intraday high on futures was 70,195. So we beat it by a grand, $1,000, a little, about 600 points higher on Bitcoin today than its all-time previous high. Now that's great, but you see what happened there. Just all of a sudden tiptoed a bunch above it and then ripped to the south side. So let me show you the spot price, because the numbers are a little bit better there. Not better, but real, because this is actual. The all-time intraday high that we now have for Bitcoin is 69,210. That was established today. And that's on the spot market. Remember, futures are going to be slightly higher. NJ says, I hope all cryptos crash. Yeah. I mean, obviously I want it to go up over time. If Bitcoin had a big crash, I would buy more. I'd probably, there's only a couple ones I would like to buy in the crypto space. Because of what happened with Celsius, I lost 100% of my EOS, 100% of my Avalanche, 100% of my Algorand, 100% of my Aave, and 100% of my Cardano. All of that was gone. It's just, frustrated with what happened with Celsius, but it is what it is. We learned from that, and there's the start of my Bitcoin pullback. It could be sly. It could be. I personally don't think you're going to see much. I think that this will probably be it. I don't see us getting back down to that 50,000 mark. Right? Remember, today at one point, if you look off from the highs that we established on Bitcoin today to its low, it was an 11.52% from peak to trough today. That is pretty significant. In reality, it just erased the gains we achieved on yesterday's session, which were fantastic, right? We were loving those breakout gains. It came back down and now is holding there. So let's see what happens in the next 24 to 48 hours with Bitcoin. My guess is it's probably going to stabilize and start to drift back to the upside. There's a lot of people that typically would think that profit taking comes into play here. But remember, this is a completely different asset class. There are people, again, I've mentioned this over and over again, like myself and Big Eb here, who aren't going to sell. Right? If Bitcoin dropped from 70,000 today to 50,000, Big Eb and I, we're going to go, wow, that sucks, but I'm not selling because I'm selling down the road. So you don't get that panic selling like you do in the equity markets. I think it's a bit different from this asset class to traditional stocks. What's up, Jesse? Sorry if let me real quick. I need to close something out here. I have my Microsoft Teams up and running, and as you can tell, I'm getting tons of messages, so I'm going to try to close this out for us all so you guys don't have to suffer through this. It's running in the background, and it's popping messages up. So one second, let me close this out and end that task. All right, done. You should hear no more messages. You'll sell when you turn 75. I may sell before that. You guys know what mine. Andrew says, Celsius bankruptcy is coming to a close. You should get a lot of that money back. No, you don't. What's happening is in the settlement, they're selling all those assets. So those assets I told you I lost, it's because they're selling off those assets, converting everything to Bitcoin and Ethereum and giving you about 10 cents on the dollar. So I'm getting some money back, but pennies compared to what I should have. Celsius and Mashinsky, I hope Mashinsky goes to jail. I really do. I hope he goes to prison. Google is 80% based on ad sales, and they have a huge change coming in June. Yeah, I didn't see their change. No more cookies in Chrome, so ads won't be as measurable and therefore valuable. Huh, interesting. I'll have to look into that one, Tom. I still think Google is in a very dominant position. If 80% of their money comes to ad revenue, then they'll have to look at different ways to generate some income here, because obviously if those measures are put in place, you'll see revenue start to slide a little bit. But we'll wait till we get down to that 120 something level. Yep, exactly. And I custody all my own now. That was back in 2020. Didn't I was just earning yield on it. Celsius, Voyager, and BlockFi got me for a lot. Got me for a lot of crypto. Bummer. Anyway, my fault. Live and learn, and don't make that same mistake again. So let's continue on with this, because I had this question from Oscar on the YouTube channel. He says, Merlin, what's the deal with MicroStrategy, MSTR? So I thought this might be interesting. Type into chat. Don't look this up. I know some of you like to go look up the answers real quick. It's just for fun. How many Bitcoin do you think Tesla holds today? So how much Bitcoin do you think Tesla holds today, right now, in their portfolio? Because remember that there was that talk that Tesla was going to sell off all their Bitcoin back in, I want to say 2021. I think it was. They bought like $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. They still own some today. How much do you think it is? If you break it down as of, I think right about 60, I think I put it in as about $63,000 per Bitcoin. Right now, Tesla has roughly $600 million worth of Bitcoin. They have 9,720 Bitcoin left. So they still have a pretty significant position. Yeah, about 600 million. Big Eb knows it. Big 600 million in Bitcoin. That's pretty good. And there's going to be more companies adding it in their books. I'm certain of it. The close, Tom says like $1 billion. No, they don't have $1 billion Bitcoin. Remember, there can't be $1 billion Bitcoin. They had $1 billion worth at one point, but they sold off a bunch of that. When their average price, I believe, was $33. When Bitcoin rallied to 60,000, they sold off a bunch of their Bitcoin and took a nice big gain on that as well, and then sold out the remainder when it fell down to, I think, 20,000. So has not been the wisest choice for them to be actively buying and selling it, but they still own 9,200 Bitcoin. Okay, now your second part of this. How many, and Liz knows this, how many Bitcoin does MicroStrategy own, MSTR, in their coffers as of today? How much Bitcoin do they have in their books? And while you guys are typing that into chat, I will go over here to the calculator, and I'm going to clear all my entries on here, clear everything, and we'll type it in. And it's currently trading at 63. Yeah, I'll call it 63. And I'll times that by how many they have. Man. There you go. Hacked his teleprompter again. Nope. Yeah, he's spying on me. I see 193. Yeah, a shed load. Yep. It is a lot. So let me go and type this in here. It's a lot. And Andrew knows it. Oh, we got Andres and Andrew. Andrew Green's got it. It's 193,000 Bitcoin. Just 193,000 Bitcoin, which is why a lot of people are saying that Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, could be multi-trillionaires. So let's go over here, and I'm going to show you 193,000, and we'll times that by 63K. So they have $12 billion worth of Bitcoin right now. $12 billion. Now, I wanted to create a graphic. I asked AI to create a graphic for kind of what I thought here. This is kind of what MicroStrategy is doing. They've got their vault, and it's just loaded with Bitcoin. Now, of course, everybody here knows there is no physical Bitcoin sitting in a vault, but maybe their private keys are sitting in a vault somewhere. Hope they don't lose those private keys. I'd like to know how they're custodying MicroStrategy's Bitcoin. Remember, if you lose your private keys or your seed phrase, that Bitcoin's gone forever. And at 193,000, it makes him one of the largest single holders of Bitcoin in the world. So I think it's a pretty impressive move to be cornering the market. I mean, I mentioned this a while back. I think it's one of the most brilliant moves that a business has done is look back at the historical track record of Bitcoin, which has grown an average of about 150% per year since 2009. He looked at that number and said, hey, I could raise a whole bunch of debt. I could raise $500 million worth of debt for MicroStrategy. I'll sell that debt at 6.5%, meaning I'll pay you 6.5% to borrow your money. And he did that. He sold off, I think it was $500 or $600 million worth of debt at 6.5%, took all of that money and bought Bitcoin with it, which is now, rallying hundreds of percent yet again. So brilliant move. Borrow money cheap, make a greater rate of return on it. Bravo, Michael Saylor, for seeing this much earlier than most people there. Yeah, I would hope, Ken, he says probably not all in the same wallet. I would hope. As a safety mechanism, you should move yours around. I don't keep all mine in one spot either. I have it in multiple locations. I have 4 separate wallets that just have Bitcoin in it exclusively. 3 paper wallets and 1 ledger wallet. So 120 billion is more than most countries' GDP. I know. And Pepe, that's a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket. So Satoshi CID is not sold as Bitcoin either. Yeah, and that's the thing. Not only is he not sold it, Andres, but this is the big thing about Satoshi is he hasn't moved any at all. Since it's only gone into that wallet, it has never moved. So this whole discussion with Craig Wright saying that he's Satoshi Nakamoto, look, bro, you're showing me emails and all this stuff to prove that you're Satoshi Nakamoto. It's easy to do. All you have to do is move one Satoshi of that wallet to some other location, right? You just tell me the address and I'll send it there. Now I'll go, okay, you're Satoshi. Instead, you've got $1 billion or 1 million Bitcoin that's sitting there and you haven't moved it. You're not Satoshi, dude. You're not. It's the CIA. All right, so Margaret says MicroStrategy down 21% today, which is probably why Oscar wants to know, what in the heck is going on with MicroStrategy. Well, remember, when you have that much Bitcoin, you have that much exposure, you're pretty much a proxy for Bitcoin. So let's look at MSTR. During this, I don't have the power right here to overlay these. I should. I can do it on a different chart. Unfortunately, I don't have this account set up for that. You've had this really nice ascent of MicroStrategy. Certainly, it's actually greater than what Bitcoin's has been. So if we go from the low there on the 23rd of January to our peak we saw here, let me just hit the snap button. Make sure we get this thing perfect. You're looking at a gain in MicroStrategy's price of roughly 200%, 209%. Whereas if you look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin hasn't had that same percentage rally. You're looking at only 81%. So kind of curious as to why that may be. Why are you seeing such a big separation between the price movement of MicroStrategy and the price movement of Bitcoin? Today we had a pretty sharp slide in Bitcoin. Yeah, down 8%. And here's MicroStrategy down 21%. To me, I would simply look at this as it feels like a leveraged ETF for Bitcoin. It seems like the moves up are magnified by 2 or 3 times, and the moves down are magnified by 2 or 3 times. That's pretty much how I'm looking at MicroStrategy going forward. I don't know their business or really what tech they do, because it's supposed to be a computer company or a software services company. But who knows? I never really looked into them. I just know they've got 193,000 Bitcoin, and every chance he gets, he is taking any free cash flow that MicroStrategy has, and he is putting that into Bitcoin. So again, most of the, I think a lot of companies out there are keeping an eye on what's going on with MicroStrategy. And I'll tell you this, if I had a multi-billion-dollar company, I would certainly have a small percentage of my assets held in Bitcoin, just knowing the math that we've discussed. So as far as what's the deal with MicroStrategy, Oscar, it's incredibly volatile. It's completely pegged to Bitcoin. But I think for some reason it has this double to triple movement factor, which I don't quite understand. Business analytics software. Yeah, I remember reading that, but what exactly, right? Is it just business success, etc.? Who knows? Not sure. So that's how I'm looking at it. There was another question that came through here, and we had talked on this one the other day, which was, what does it take for them to get into the S&P 500? Well, one of the main criteria is market cap, so it's got to be over 10 billion. That's a check. I will go here and show you. If we go to statistics, you can see their market cap right now is 17.8 billion. That's fine. If you look at their statistics here, you can also see their float. Remember, S&P 500 is a float weighted, so they basically want to see that a lot of your float is out there. We've seen some companies that have a very small percentage of their float kind of public. Right here, shares outstanding. 15 million. And I'm not sure what implied outstanding shares means. That's a weird number. But outstanding shares is 15 million. The float is 14.9, which basically means that almost all the shares are in circulation and available to purchase. That to me gives it qualifications to be on the S&P. It's just, I don't think it's going to get there because of its exposure to Bitcoin. I think the committee that's going to be making that decision, I just don't see them overlooking the exposure that MicroStrategy has to Bitcoin. It's too big of a risk to it. Now, could they add MicroStrategy as a small component and keep its weighting very small? Yeah, they could, but that would deviate from the index construction mechanism, which is going to be float market cap weighted. Now, this one's also very small. It's going to be on the lower end of that one, about $17 billion market cap. Not going to be a heavily weighted one if it does get added, but I personally do not see it being added to the S&P 500. I've heard all kinds of talk about it. Johnny the Spot says, how do you feel about E-Trade? You mean as a place to trade and invest? It's the same as Charles Schwab. I mean, Ameritrade was bought by Charles Schwab. It's the same. It's an entry-level platform. It's fine. I would definitely use an E-Trade or a Schwab over a Robinhood. I wouldn't use Robinhood. I don't trust Robinhood, and B, I think that their model has been exposed, and no, I wouldn't use that one. What's that? Ed Snowden thinks the U.S. government is cornering the Bitcoin market. Did you hear anything on this? I've been wanting to watch the interview with Edward Snowden, or there's a recent interview with Edward Snowden that I'd like to watch where he talks a lot about that. I have heard about that, but I don't know for sure. And if they're cornering the market, even better. You think about the discussion we had yesterday, Naum, which is very interesting, which in my conspiracy world mind, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. However, the fact that we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, or it's this shrouded mystery no one knows. That's weird to me. And the fact that if you take his name and look it up in Japanese, it loosely translates to Intelligence Central. So, Central Intelligence. And there's, again, my belief is that Satoshi Nakamoto was actually is a CIA group. And if, in fact, we had the CIA issue this Bitcoin, and maybe the CIA is still holding that 1 million Bitcoin that was, quote-unquote, Satoshi Nakamoto's, and that's why it hasn't moved. They're just waiting. Because what happens is if the world starts to gain more dependency and utilizes Bitcoin more, then he who holds the most Bitcoin becomes the most powerful person in the world, or powerful entity in the world, right? So if the U.S. government is secretly cornering the market, I don't know if that's true because the analytics aren't proving that. You could see where all the money's going. If that, in fact, is the case, that Satoshi Nakamoto was the Central Intelligence Agency, it's a government-funded thing, and I think it's done as a test to, again, see if they can get a digital dollar pushed out in the public so they can track everything and control all money supply, which the government, I don't think anybody here would disagree that that's what the government would love to do, is control every single thing that we do, right? While your elected official may say, I want you to have freedoms and freedoms and freedoms, the more control they have, the more money they can make, and the more they keep us in check, and the less likely we are to revolt. So digital currency, I think, wants to control that. So yeah, I could totally see them cornering that market. I could see the CIA, the government, is slowly building this position, confiscating like Silk Road's Bitcoin, although they did auction those off. Remember, the Silk Road stuff, which they confiscated, they auctioned that off years ago. They still hold a bunch more of others that they've confiscated over the years, but it's not a conspiracy theory that I would discredit. It does seem like there is some validity there. If we get other countries using Bitcoin and gain adoption, then the value of whatever the government is holding, just that 1 million that Satoshi Nakamoto has, could be worth quadrillions of dollars at some point. So yeah, this is why I'm going to Ethereum. Well, Ethereum might be worse. Remember, Ethereum doesn't have a cap. Ethereum can continue making Ethereum into infinity. Right? There's no ceiling on how many are. Now, there's a predictive release schedule, so you have about two ETH. Actually, I have to update my knowledge on this one because when we went from proof of work to proof of stake, that number may change, but I'm pretty sure it's 2 Ethereum created about every 15 seconds. There you go. El Salvador is a lot wealthier today due to Bitcoin. It's twofold, Naum. If you look at what happened in El Salvador, number one, it was President Bukele going in there and putting down the iron fist on gangs, right? So their gangs they had on there, which were pretty significant, that wasn't Bitcoin related. That was, we're getting rid of you, right? So he basically pushed all those gang members out. He's built prisons that houses and if you have a gang tattoo, you're going to prison. Period. Done. Crime has dropped significantly. Tourism is surging because of Bitcoin, right? There's Bitcoin City. And what it's doing is it's bringing in a whole bunch of business people. I have not been, one of my goals was to go to El Salvador and check it out. Not that I would be spending my Bitcoin, but I would love to see a culture that doesn't have a total government control over money. If I want to pay for your goods and services, I can pay you with Bitcoin, and that transaction is between us. Government doesn't need to know about that. I like that stuff. I really think that's interesting. They have about, it's Big Eb says El Salvador has about 150 million in Bitcoin. Yeah, so it's not huge, right? They're not Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor's got way more than El Salvador, but it's a start to see. We are witnessing a science experiment, an economics experiment right now unfold before us with El Salvador. What has Bitcoin, a decentralized, non-government controlled currency, done to GDP numbers? Well, it hasn't done anything directly, but what it's done is it's brought in so much money in tourism that their economy is surging. They're doing much better than they have over the past decades because it's bringing in all of these crypto tourists like myself would go there. Plus, El Salvador's got some beautiful beaches. I mean, come on. Americans flooded into Costa Rica, and Costa Rica didn't have any of this nice stuff that El Salvador does with regards to digital assets. You clean up the crime, you clean up the city, you make it affordable for people to come and visit. Man, El Salvador might be the next hot spot to go to. And I know that it's been surging with regards to real estate prices because I've been looking at them because I thought I would buy some beachfront property. Why not buy an acre of beachfront land and just see what happens? I may still happen at some point. If anybody knows a good realtor down in El Salvador, let me know. Or anyone who go into an investment property. All right, so that's what I have to say about MicroStrategy. Look, to me, it's just a leveraged proxy for Bitcoin. What's the deal with it, Oscar? I think if you trade it, you got to be careful. If you're bullish on Bitcoin, then MicroStrategy is your long-term bet. Now, I keep hearing people tell me that MicroStrategy is going to split. It probably will. There's no real need for it to split, but they could easily. Because what happens is MicroStrategy now starts to not look as pretty because it's trading at $1,000. A lot of people look at that and go, oh, I can't afford $1,000. Well, again, a 10% move doesn't matter whether you buy 10% of a $1,000 stock or 10% of a penny stock. Right? It's still 10% move. So MicroStrategy, a double or triple leveraged publicly traded company for Bitcoin. Tom says, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I am a conspiracy observer. I like that. Yeah. There's a couple things I have conspiracy theories about. I do think that I believe that we have developed, or not developed, we have discovered alien life forms of some kind. To think we're the only rock in this massive galaxy solar system of thousands and thousands, if not millions of planets, to say we're the only living life form, the only thing, I think that's just ignorant. No way. The odds are so slim. We've got some ships somewhere. It's got to be. Just let the American people see it, right? I think the concern is that we're too afraid. It would cause chaos. No, it would cause exploration. It would cause people to be curious and want to go see and develop and discover. But anyway, that's my conspiracy theory. Big Eb says NVIDIA will split soon. Yes, I think NVIDIA will definitely split. I mean, we've gone in NVIDIA in the last year. We've gone from $200 to $860. So you're 4x. Phenomenal. It's just going to keep on going. I'm waiting for the TraderMerlin show from El Salvador. Hey, Andres, if I ever go down there, I will do a live stream from Bitcoin City, and I'll put probably $1,000 worth of Bitcoin on a wallet. I'll put it into probably the Strike app, and I will do the whole trip with just Bitcoin. To spend it, to experience, to show how easy it is to transact with it, but that might be. Maybe I do that. Maybe I end up doing that this year, Andres. I should do it. I really should, because I'm such a curious observer of what this digital asset world is going to do. I just have my assumptions and my educated assumptions, having been a trader and studying economics for a long time, to see how it's going to kind of grow and grow and grow. It may fail, right? It may fail miserably, but I don't think so. I talked about the evolution of things over time. It's gone from analog to digital, and money is that last frontier of going from analog to digital. There you go. Splits make it easier to do covered calls, and it makes it more accessible, brings in more liquidity. It brings in the Robinhood investors, because the Robinhood investor is going to go, I can't afford a share of NVIDIA at $861, but If they do a 10-to-1 split, now all of a sudden, I can afford $86. I'll buy one share of NVIDIA. So you bring in a whole lot of new. Add that chapter to my book. If I ever finish that damn thing now. If I ever finish it. Jeff says timeshares. No, I'd want to own one. I have some good friends, and they went down to Costa Rica years ago. This is completely off topic, so we're not even talking trading now. But it's an interesting story. I think it was about maybe 15, 20 years ago. Some of my really good friends, they went down to Costa Rica, and they just loved it. They were on the western coast. They absolutely loved Costa Rica. And so they kept going back. Every few months they would go back, and they met a lot of locals, and they would bring really nice bottles of rum down, and they would just sit at the local bars and meet people that they had an objective, but they were meeting people, and they would like, hey, let's drink my really nice bottle of rum, and they were starting to meet people, and they said, hey, do you know, we would love to live here. They became friends with some people, and they found a local who wanted to sell their house, and they bought it. They paid cash for this house from them, and they basically told those people, you can live in this house. You can stay here and you maintain it. You have to keep it nice. But when we call you and say there's guests coming, you gotta get out. And they're like, wait, so we get to like live here for free, but we have to take care of the place? I'm like, yep. So now they Airbnb that house when they don't visit it. And you know, that they have their own maintenance. They have their own, you know, cleaning people, and they're always there. So it doesn't get run over or take over by vandalizers or anything like that. So kind of interesting idea. Kind of an interesting idea. Anyway, maybe that'll happen in El Salvador. Okay, question was what happened in the banking sector? At least that's what I'm seeing there. There was a New York bank that lately has been, damn it, I had it up on the screen too. I think what you're getting to with the banking sector, and let me bring up I think I actually cut out a lot of my banking stocks. I had the whole sector mapped out down here. You know, here's some of the financials today. So let's look at XLF, just so we can have that one on there as a visual. So I think that's what you're asking me for was what happened to the back sector today? You mean bank sector? There you go. Thank you infinitely. Yeah, that NYCB. Someone messaged me and asked me what I thought about NYCB, and I said this looks very similar to NYCB. Yeah, New York Community Bank shares. So you've got accounting irregularity things going on with them. You know, if you're looking to buy something, this is just dangerous. I mean, we've seen this happen with Signature. We've seen this happen with Silicon Valley Bank. We've seen this happen with First Republic. I mean, this could go to zero. It could go into receivership. So right now, anybody who is an account holder at New York Community Bank Corp is freaking out because this is now making the news. They're going down to that bank to take their money out, and there may be a run on the bank, which could cause them to go insolvent. So I would not buy NYCB. Does it look great at $3? Sure, because it was $10 just a couple weeks ago. But I certainly would not touch exactly FRC.B, which means bankrupt. This one could be there. This one could definitely be there in the bankrupt case. So as far as what happened in the banking sector today, I don't know if I could say that anything really happened in the banking sector today. If you look at XLF, financials didn't do anything. There was really nothing going on there. Crypto is what happens, the rate of return on bank. Cryptos, what happened? Cryptos, what happened? The rate of return on bank products. I'm not sure if I understand that one, Oliver. Accounting irregularities is a warning sign. Absolutely, Margaret. You know who else had accounting irregularities? Enron. WorldCom, look at those companies, gone. The big difference here between a bank stock and something like Enron and WorldCom is in Enron or WorldCom, you bought the stock because you thought, oh, it's a great energy company or it's a great technology company, right? Oh, great. It's a bank. You have physical money in there. So not only does an accounting irregularity freak people out, but it creates the run. And if all of a sudden people start pulling their money out of any bank, you run that risk of insolvency, because now the bank is going to be in a position. Remember, banks are buying long-term bonds, and those long-term bonds have been kind of inverted for a while. So if they're forced to sell those bonds early and not hold to maturity, then they take a loss on those bonds, which further exacerbates the losses. So I'm not touching NYCB. Forget about it. Big emphasis on WorldCom. FTX. Well, that one's actually starting to it's starting to rise from the ashes there a little bit, Shinobi. Good to see you, Brian. Hope you're doing well. SOFI. Well, I can't speak to individual ones. So, when you look at the overall sector, I think the banking sector is solid. But when you look through, like say XLF, there are certainly some in there that have been getting hurt. None of these big ones that I'm looking at. But, SoFi, yeah, it's down big today, down 15%. And this could be anything. It really could be anything. Maybe they changed their rates of return. I know that Ally Bank has now dropped their rates. They were paying like 4.5%, and they dropped it to 4.3%, and maybe people pulling money out. Who knows what the case may be, but I don't see anything that I would be overly concerned with. Let's see what I say. It's worst day on record, but Dow Jones. SoFi offered debt. So basically, SoFi is selling debt to raise money, and maybe the question is why they need this money, or are they in a bad position or what, but I don't know. At this point, I'm not concerned with SoFi. Did you already talk about today's crypto? I did, Brian. Yeah, we talked about that quite a bit. I'm trying to not make the show all crypto. Yesterday we did a lot of crypto stuff out there, and then today I just kind of sprinkling on the buy the rumor, sell the news event that happened in crypto today. Did I have one more question? I thought I had a question. One sec. Let me just check, make sure. Nope. All right, I've got all the questions you have sent in covered. So let's go out, and I want to show a couple things here because we did have some earnings that we need to speak about. And it goes back to what Big Ed was talking about. You got Target here. So Target reported earnings before market opened today. And look what Target did. Target, is doing great. Target's been on a tear. I could look back now and say my regret is I didn't hold on to it. I was selling puts on TGT, which had great premium because when I sold them, people were freaking out back here. Oh my God, Target, it's the end of the world. I'm never going back. And man, that was when this thing was trading $110. And here we are at 167 today on Target. Nice big gap up. For anybody who's looking at, potential turning points or shorting points here, you do have a supply zone that it's running into, right? Let me get my drawing tool on here, right? Where's my price box? There we go. So you're looking at right about there to there. Great. It's going to be a really tough one. You're kind of right in that supply zone right now. Right? This may be that potential short opportunity, buy the rumor, sell the news. Now, I'm not saying to short Target right now, but I would wait tomorrow and see. If it starts to show some weakness, you might see some profit taking and some gap closure here on Target tomorrow. But man, what a fantastic run that Target has had from those lows back here on October 6th of last year. 65% run. Certainly not Bitcoin type gains, but man, 65% in less than a year. Phenomenal. Great move. Target was probably below book value in September. Great value buy. Yep, and that's part of the reason I was looking at it, Margaret. It wasn't just Target, right? It was... One thing I really enjoy looking for is I like it when a good company gets overly crushed. When panic sets in and people are like, oh my gosh, and the market precipitates this fear and crushes it. That happened to Target. It also happened to Anheuser-Busch, right? We saw that happen with Budweiser. Back here, you guys remember, everyone's like, I'm not drinking Budweiser. They're going to have transgender spokespeople. Well, that's when this thing was at $54. It rallied all the way up to 66. Great. What was the other one? JP Morgan. All right, this one I also had a buy on. And you look at what happened to JP Morgan in that banking crisis. It fell down in 2023. It fell down $126. And here we are at 188, pretty much just ripping to the upside. So it's one thing if a company gets totally crushed and annihilated for being a bad company. Good example is GoEV. I like the product, but I haven't seen it. GoEV, this thing's just been getting murdered, slaughtered. This thing looks like absolute trash. Okay, well, leave that one alone. But you look at something like Google, which got slaughtered recently. Granted, it's not 30, 40, 50% drop, but you have a great company that got caught up in some hype, all this AI hoopla, and people are freaking out about it. Elon Musk is just throwing haymakers at Google on his Twitter feed about their AI because it made Elon Musk black. I think that's pretty damn funny. But those types of things, I think, create buying opportunities. You got to be careful and not put all your money into it, right? In the UK, the government covers bank deposits up to £80,000. Okay, that's a little less than the U.S. U.S. is $250,000 US dollars. So let's go here, British pound, see what that currency rate is at right now. Hold on a second. GBP USD. So you're at 1.27. So you're looking about like 110,000 US dollars is covered by the UK government. We have 250,000 here for cash deposits and 500,000 for securities. Hopefully it never gets to that point where we have to file a claim against our government for that. But let's see. Infinitely says, been waiting for a bank run on NYCB, but so far no outflows. Maybe the increased FDIC protection and government initiated back. Yeah, it could be around Signature Bank collapse is easing people's fears. I'd take mine out. I would take mine out too, Infinite. Absolutely. I would definitely take my money out. This is why I kind of want to put my money in more in crypto. Even if I get 1% gains in price appreciation in Bitcoin over the year, that's still beating my bank. And I have ownership of it. It's big. That's the big piece is I own it. If there's a run in the bank, yeah, I'm insured up to $250,000, but how long do I have to wait to get that? How long is that process? I mean, I could wait months, years until they finally do settlement and I get my cash out. I don't know. Banks I mentioned this before, banks are a necessary evil. Banks are great because they help grow the economy. They're lending out money and they're doing it fractionally. Fractionals are lending. They can take $1 and lend out 10. It's crazy. It's like making money out of thin air. While it's great, it also is a double-edged sword because when the system starts to falter and there's a run on those banks, it can create serious problems. And we're starting to experience that with some banks because of their business practices and that inverted yield curve. All right, so that was earnings. Let me just show you. That was the target one. NEO as well. I'm actually looking at buying some EV companies for my portfolio. What happened? Let's go to NEO here. I've been looking at NEO, which has not been doing that well. It was up 2.81% today, but I just have a hard time buying penny stocks. I told you I might gamble on GoEV, which it really looks bad. I actually think I want to drive up to Torrance someday here in the near future and check them out just to see if what their facility looks like. They never email me back in response to actually seeing one of the vehicles, which I would put a down payment on because I'm weird and the car looks pretty damn weird. Tesla, right? Another 3.93% slide today. Again, follow the trend. In this case, it's making lower highs, lower lows. The key for Tesla will be, we established a low over here on February 5th. That low is 175.01, and we're currently at 180. So if it continues to break this lower downtrend line, you're gonna seek out these lower lows and just stay short on Tesla until it starts to turn and go higher. June is 3 months away. I'm sure another couple companies will step on their own tail by taking to, of course, Blue Diesel, nature of the markets. Stretch. See, the thing is, if you and I extend our personal spending, we just go way overboard and we put ourselves in a huge financial crisis situation, we're stuck. We're screwed. We're going to have to suffer through it for decades, to get out of it and go file bankruptcy and all that crap. A company can do it. Company can overextend themselves, take on massive risk, and when they fail, it just gets swept away into bankruptcy, and the CEO keeps their 6-figure, 7-figure salaries and just walks away unscathed. That's what's wrong. Unfortunately, when you look at the way economies grow, you have to reward businesses as opposed to individual people. When you reward people like Apple and Intel and Microsoft, theoretically they're going to hire a lot more people. They'll be building infrastructure and creating jobs and spending money in taxes. Unfortunately, that's just the way the system is. Let's see, BYD. Sales have dropped a lot recently. Probably not a good one to get into. So if you look at BYD, it's interesting because BYD said they're not going to enter the U.S. market. However, they're going to enter the Australian market, which doesn't have the population that the United States does, but still Australia could be a great market for BYD, for electric vehicles. Now, I don't know what Tesla's market share is in Australia, if any. I'm not privy of those numbers at all, but BYD might have a big competitive advantage. They do a lot of trade with China anyway. Trade with Australia anyway, so that might be a good one. Exactly, the bailout. It would be nice if we all got bailouts. Let's go to tomorrow's earnings so I can wrap this up. I was planning on doing a 30-minute show again. So we had good retailer numbers today. You have more retail numbers coming out. You have JD.com, Abercrombie and Fitch, Foot Locker. Let's see, let me do it by market cap. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So not a lot of really big names in that space, but we do have stuff on the Forex front. So let me bring up my Forex calendar here to see what's going on in the U.S. markets from an economic perspective. Let's go to calendar here, and I'll show you what's going on tomorrow. Are they? I figured they would be, Shinobi. I just don't know how dominant their market share was. So you notice a lot of red on this one. There's a lot of pretty big announcements, particularly for the United States. Tomorrow we start things off with jobs. That's this one. Not that you got you on the wrong screen. That's this one. And ADP non-farm employment change is expected to have a surge tomorrow from 107 to 149. That would be good to see an increase in job availability. For the British markets, you have the annual budget release. Canada has a rate announcement, which is expected to stay right where it's at, which is 5%, so no surprise there. And then for the U.S., we start 2 days of testimony for Jerome Powell. This first one is in front of the, I forget that there's two different ones. This is the Financial Services Committee for the House of Representatives. The next day will be the Banking Committee. So that's a big one. Again, that starts at 7 a.m. Pacific time. So 30 minutes in the trading day. He may be speaking and saying something. So if you see weird gyrations and very big volatile moves in the market, it's probably Jerome Powell. You also have the press conference for Canada coming out about 45 minutes after their rate statement. That's always important, particularly for this local currency. We have crude oil inventories. You have the Beige Book and an FOMC member speaking tomorrow. And that, my friends, is it. So quite a bit of stuff going on for tomorrow. Thank you for those that sent in questions and kind of, was that Jane? No, G Wolf, of course, I think from Bavaria, ein Münchner. And then also from Oscar asking about MicroStrategy. Hopefully I answered your questions there. Again, the inner workings of MicroStrategy, I don't know. I should look at it because I've always been kind of interested, but I've just got so many things on my plate I just never do. And then CPI, yep. We have a lot of great information. CrowdStrike ripping tonight after their earnings. I didn't see, did we have them on the earnings calendar for today? I think I did. Oh yeah, CrowdStrike was up 25%. So they beat earnings. It was a good beat. They were supposed to make 82 cents, came out at 95. Let's go CRWD. And right now they're trading at 374. Woo, lordy, that's off the charts. That's an all-time high for CrowdStrike. Goodness, that's phenomenal. All right, that's gonna do it for me, everybody. Careful out there. We'll see what happens with probably the most critical one for me anyways, what goes on with that Bitcoin price chart. Keep your eye on Apple as well if we get a follow through to the downside. It feels, knowing the way these markets work, you get that panic sell off and there'll be a nice little bounce back up. Personally, I'd rather it continue on to the south side here for Apple, but we'll have to wait and see. That said, if you guys have any comments, questions, things you want me to talk about on tomorrow's show, put them down below. Any of the YouTube videos like Oscar did with his MicroStrategy question, or you can just email me at TraderMerlin@gmail.com. Take care, everybody. I will see you mañana.